Hello everybody and welcome to my review of True Beauty. So please be warned that this review will contain spoilers, and I'll also just mention that I know this is based on a webtoon, but I haven't read it, so I'll just be commenting on the series only. Now, it's been ages since I've watched a K-drama, or at least one focused on romance. It's actually really rare for me to come across a Korean drama that I enjoy, just because I usually find them overly sentimental and dramatic and cheesy, but the main reason why I find it hard to get into them is because they often reinforce traditional gender roles, where the female lead is usually portrayed as weak and submissive, and she needs the male lead's protection. At least this is where straight romance is concerned, which is the majority of K-dramas out there, and I just get kind of tired of seeing this sort of dynamic over and over again. But that being said, even though True Beauty does fall prey to these tropes on occasion, I still really enjoyed watching this series, and I even binged it in just under 2 days. And I think what I enjoyed most about it and what kept me watching was that the two leads were incredibly likable, as well as the second male lead, and the chemistry between all three of them was just fantastic. And the story itself was very fun and endearing, and it ended up just being a super easy watch. But I wouldn't say the show is anything profound or deep or complex. It's pretty basic and predictable, and it features all the usual tropes like the overdramatic scenes and the classic wrist grabs and lots of fluff and cheese, and also many cringeworthy and embarrassing moments for the characters. Though for me, I really enjoyed the cringe in this show, and I think the show also has a really sweet message at its core about appearances and that looks don't or shouldn't matter, and it's what's on the inside that counts in the end. And this is why I was drawn into the premise initially, because it's about a girl, Jugyeong, who is supposedly extremely ugly. Though in reality, it's just that she has some acne problems and wears thick glasses and has thick eyebrows. But in the show, this equates to being the ugliest person at school, and she's often bullied and teased pretty ruthlessly by her classmates to the point where she wants to kill herself. But after she decides not to, she soon discovers the wonders of makeup and becomes an expert at it by watching videos, and so that when she starts at another school, everybody wants to be her friend because she's so beautiful. And so for the main part of the story, it's about Jugyeong trying to hide her identity, or in this case her ugly face, just so no one will know her secret and she won't be bullied anymore. And initially, I didn't really like that after she learns how to use makeup, she suddenly goes from being the complete loser at school to being the top beauty goddess or whatever in her new school. It just felt so unrealistic and ridiculous, like when she walks through school on her first day and everyone's gasping and staring and pointing at her because she is just that beautiful. Like, it just felt kind of lame, but in the end, I ended up thinking this was a good creative choice to make, at least from a character's perspective, because it makes for a more interesting story, with Jugyeong getting to experience both extremes of the spectrum, and it would make her fall from grace when she's revealed even that more dramatic. On the romance side of things, the male lead is Suho, the broody, mysterious guy who is the top student in their year and pretty much perfect in everything. And then there's Seojun, who is the bad boy with a heart of gold. And both these guys are considered the most popular and good looking in Jugyeong's year, and they both eventually find out her secret at different times, and they also both end up falling in love with her. I actually really loved this aspect of the story, particularly for Suho, because he notices Jugyeong and starts having feelings for her when she isn't wearing makeup and he doesn't know that she is the same person at school. He just really likes her when she's being her weird, quirky and nerdy self. And then even later, after he finds out, he tells her that he can't tell the difference between her made-up face and her non-made-up face. And I really liked this because even with the rise of feminism and women gaining more equality around the world, I still feel like women are judged more on their looks than men, and hence their preoccupation with skincare and makeup and fashion. And it just feels like there's generally more pressure on females to be good looking than there is on males to be good looking. Often when people compliment women, the first thing they will jump to is how beautiful she is, and it usually goes beautiful, smart, and funny, or something along those lines, whereas when people are praising guys, they usually say how strong or brave or nice he is, and being good looking or handsome just seems to fall further down the list of priorities. And so for this show, I really appreciated having the two hottest guys in school falling in love with the ugly duckling loser girl, so to speak. For Jugyeong, I think Moon Ka-young's portrayal of her is fantastic, and I think she really carries the show. I loved her warmth and bubbly personality, and she's also very quirky and likable. Though it annoyed me a little how clueless she is a lot of the time, and she spends a great deal of the show getting jerked around by the two male characters who are portrayed as smarter and more savvy than her, just like in their general intelligence and street smarts and common sense kind of stuff. Also, those bully scenes to make her seem extra pitiful were laid on just a little too thick and overdone in my opinion, like when she's pushed around and then always ends up on the floor somehow with everybody laughing at her because she's so ugly, and she'll just accept it and stare at the ground and cry and feel sorry for herself. It was just quite exaggerated, especially when the people laughing at her for her looks are themselves don't really have anything to brag about either, so it just seemed a little hypocritical and like fake or engineered kind of drama just to make Jugyeong feel bad about herself. But I suppose having her so passive and frustrating in those scenes makes it all the more impactful when she finally does have those brief moments of empowerment when she stands up for herself. Like, my two favorite moments of her doing this is when she tells off Suho for getting her to run all his errands, and also at the climax when she's been found out, and after she's had her big cry episode, she comes back to school without putting on makeup and faces her fears essentially. And I loved that moment when she stood up to those random girls making fun of her, and also stands up for Suho because the girls say that there must be something wrong with him if he knew how ugly she was and still continued dating her. I was a little worried at this point in the story that she'd go the self-proclaimed martyr way and break up with him or deny that they were ever together because she wants to protect him and his reputation from being soiled by dating her. And I also loved that Suho just watches this all play out from the sidelines, and there's a huge smile on his face and he just looks so happy and proud of her, and then he hugs her afterwards. It was just really sweet, and I'm glad that she didn't need him to step in and protect her. One other minor criticism I had about Jugyeong is that I think she cries just a little too often, that it eventually loses its impact. In terms of the main love interest lead, Suho, I think Cha Eun-woo does a really good job at playing the typical stoic, distant, and unfriendly handsome guy that everyone fawns stupidly over. I think Suho's relationship with Jugyeong was so lovely, and his feelings for her are, for the most part, very pure and non-toxic or possessive, and I love how he cares so much about how she feels about herself and is very supportive of her. And I like how she made him feel comfortable and normal. I just recently watched and reviewed the anime Romantic Killer, and Suho feels pretty much identical to Kazuki's character, but just with minor differences to their personalities, which I thought was pretty funny. I also really enjoyed Suho's interaction and friendship with Seojun. I didn't really care for their whole backstory with the third friend who kills himself. I just didn't find that thread of the story particularly interesting or engaging, but I liked Suho and Seojun's enmity with each other, and later their friendship when they become close again. However, outside of those two relationships, I don't think Suho had much of an interesting character story. I wasn't invested in his whole family conflict with his father, or his guilt in thinking that he's to blame that his friend died by suicide. Of course, for romance to work, they need to have a sob story for him, so he can go from having an emotional wound to being healed by Jugyeong's love, so his backstory served that purpose and did its job, but I just didn't find it engaging and was bored during those scenes. For Seojun as the second love interest, I really liked him. I usually don't care about the secondary male leads because I usually find their story arc quite dull, and it's only really there to serve the purpose of reinforcing the main couple's romance. But for Seojun, he was a very likable character and he had a lot of charisma. And I felt so bad for him the whole time as he's slowly developing feelings for Jugyeong, because you know he'll never end up with her. And it's kind of obvious that it's deliberately written this way because he's never given those opportunities or any moments where he and Jugyeong can potentially bond and fall in love. Because of course, those types of scenes are reserved only for Suho, so Seojun never truly got his moment to shine with Jugyeong. One thing that annoyed me though about him later, he became quite pushy with Jugyeong towards the end. Like, he clearly knew that she didn't like him and that he doesn't stand a chance, yet he still forces her to go out with him on 3 dates. So I think I would have respected him more if he just told her how he felt, got rejected, and then moved on, rather than dragging it out over several dates that she obviously doesn't want to go on and feels uncomfortable in. As for Jugyeong's friends, Seojun and Suha, they were fine, but neither stood out to me or were especially memorable. I liked Sujin initially when she was like the badass female who doesn't take anyone's crap, but then later she just becomes defined by her feelings for Suho and there's little else to her character. They did have those moments with her father beating her and being really tough on her, but I still found that she was lacking depth because it's still always related to Suho and how she feels about him. And Suha was even more one-dimensional and is pretty much just a minor side character, and she doesn't even affect the plot at all, really. So I think they could have been written better and a bit more fleshed out and had more complexities and layers to make them more interesting. And lastly, I just want to talk about the structure. So the series runs for 16 episodes, so it's not an extremely long show, but it felt that it dragged halfway through. I thought the first few episodes were done extremely well, especially episode 1. I think it was a great opening scene that showed what Jugyeong was all about, so it revealed her backstory, her personality, her situation, and what her emotional stakes are. Of course, the love confession and the bullying scenes were pretty cringy and stupid, but I was completely hooked after she thinks about killing herself and then decides against it. It was such a great little character arc within just that one episode, and it made me respect her more, and I wanted to continue following her story. Because up until that point, she was just a pitiful person who lacked self-determination and conviction. So it was just nice seeing her little character growth during that one scene where she decides to live. I also thought the following episodes afterwards were also really engaging because she's busy trying to keep her ugly face a secret and having these 2 identities that she has to manage. And also the misunderstanding between her and Suho about what the secret he knows was also very funny, and I probably found those scenes between them the most enjoyable of the series. But then halfway through, after she starts dating Suho, the show kind of lost momentum for me. There were a lot of fluffy and cute scenes, but the emotional stakes just didn't feel as high anymore, romance-wise at least, and there wasn't enough conflict, I think. But the show picks up again once her past bullies from her old school discover her secret, and then Jugyeong gets outed in front of the entire school, and so there's a consequent fallout from that, which I really enjoyed watching play out. However, after she faces all her fears and deals with the school situation, there's a 2-year time skip where Suho breaks up with Jugyeong because he goes to the US to look after his father, who's been hospitalized there. And I just found this so unnecessary, and it felt tacked on just for the sake of adding more drama and angst and just another hoop for the main couple to jump through. And I feel like the series would have been stronger if it had just ended after Jugyeong finally stands up for herself at school and she's confident with her face without makeup, because this was the real high point of the show and what the entire premise of the story was working towards. But overall, I really enjoyed True Beauty. It was really lighthearted and fluffy and feel-good fun. Like, it's really tropey and silly, but it's also such an enjoyable ride with extremely likable characters and a sweet message at its heart. So that's it for my review. As always, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of the series. Like, did you find the time skip a little jarring and abrupt as well? Or did you like it and didn't find an issue with it? And are you Team Suho or are you Team Seojun? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please like the video if you did, and subscribe if you want to hear more. And also feel free to leave me any recommendations on shows that you like in the comments below.